Welcome to the Stoic Tide. Most people think self-respect means standing up to toxic people, matching their energy, proving you won't be disrespected, fighting fire with fire. So they yell when yelled at. They manipulate when manipulated. They descend to win. And they do win sometimes, but they lose something bigger in the process, themselves. The Stoics understood something most people miss. The moment you let toxic people dictate your behavior, you've already lost your self-respect. Because self-respect isn't about proving your worth to people who can't see it. It's about maintaining your character when someone else has abandoned theirs. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like that. Not louder, not crueler, not matching their toxicity to prove a point. Just refusing to become what you're standing against." Today, I'll walk you through 6 Stoic principles for maintaining self-respect around toxic people. Not by defeating them, but by mastering yourself. Principle number 3 is the hardest. It demands you do the opposite of every instinct when you're being attacked, but it's the one that protects your dignity most powerfully. By the end, you'll know how to stay grounded, dignified, and unshaken, even when surrounded by people trying to break you. If you're tired of toxic people stealing your peace, if you want your self-respect back, let's begin. Principle number 1, separate their behavior from your worth. When a toxic person attacks you, criticizes, insults, belittles, your first instinct is to take it personally, to wonder if they're right, to defend yourself against their assessment. But here's what you need to understand. Toxic behavior reveals the attacker's character, not your value. Their cruelty is about their wounds, not your flaws. And the moment you start defending your worth to someone whose opinion is shaped by their own damage, you've handed them power they don't deserve. I watched this play out between 2 employees at a company I consulted for. Both reported to the same toxic manager. A man who criticized relentlessly, found fault in everything, made people feel incompetent no matter how well they performed. The first employee, Sarah, took every criticism to heart. She'd work late, trying to prove him wrong, redo projects obsessively, ask anxiously if her work was acceptable. Now she lost sleep, lost confidence, started believing maybe she wasn't good enough. The second employee, James, had a different approach. After the same brutal critique, he'd pause, evaluate if any of it was actually valid, take what was useful, and discard the rest. When I asked him how he didn't internalize it, he said, "That man tears down everyone. It's not about my work. It's about whatever's broken in him that needs to break other people to feel powerful. I'm not going to let his damage define my worth." Here's what James understood that Sarah didn't. When someone is chronically toxic, constantly critical, perpetually negative, habitually cruel, it's not about you. It's about them. Hurt people hurt people. Insecure people tear others down to feel superior. Unhappy people spread their misery because company and suffering feels better than suffering alone. And when you understand this, truly understand that their behavior is a symptom of their internal state, not a verdict on your value, you stop taking it personally, not because you're dismissive, but because you see the truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come from it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage or anger." This doesn't mean accepting abuse. It means understanding that toxic people attack from their own pain, and that understanding protects you from internalizing their poison. Here's how you practice this. Next time someone toxic criticizes you, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, is this about me or is this about them? Look at the pattern. Do they criticize everyone? Is their negativity constant? Are they projecting their own failures onto you? Usually the answer is yes. Their attack is their pain seeking an outlet, and you just happen to be nearby. Take what's objectively useful from their words. If there's any legitimate feedback buried in the cruelty, extract it. But the venom, the personal attacks, the character assassinations, those belong to them, not you. Don't carry what was never yours to hold. Self-respect means knowing your worth independent of broken people's opinions. It means you can hear their criticism without letting it become your identity, because you understand something they've forgotten. How someone treats you says everything about them and nothing about your value. And when you truly believe that, they lose the power to wound you. But understanding they're projecting isn't enough. The second principle is about where you actually place your energy when you can't control their behavior. Principle number 2, control only what you can control. When someone toxic is in your life, your natural instinct is to try to change them, to make them see reason, to explain yourself better so they'll finally understand, to prove you're right so they'll stop. You spend hours crafting the perfect response. You rehearse conversations. You strategize ways to make them behave differently. And all that effort, all that mental and emotional energy accomplishes nothing. 'Cause here's the truth. You cannot control them. You can only control yourself. And every minute you spend trying to change what you can't change is a minute you're letting them control you. My cousin Lisa spent 5 years trying to fix her relationship with her toxic mother. Every visit ended in criticism. Every phone call became an argument. Her mother would tear down Lisa's career choices, her parenting, her marriage. Nothing was ever good enough. And Lisa kept trying. She'd explain her decisions more clearly. She'd bring evidence of her success. She'd ask what would make her mother proud. Nothing worked. The criticism never stopped. It just found new targets. I watched Lisa exhaust herself in this cycle until one day she said something that changed everything. I can't make her see me differently. I've been trying to control her opinion of me, and that's not in my power. The only thing I can control is how I respond when she criticizes me. And I'm choosing to stop defending myself to someone who's determined not to understand. That shift from trying to control her mother to controlling only her own response saved Lisa's sanity. She stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped trying to earn approval that was never going to come. When her mother criticized, Lisa would say calmly, "I've heard your opinion. I'm comfortable with my choice." And then she'd change the subject or end the conversation. Her mother didn't change. But Lisa's relationship to the toxicity did, because she finally understood what Epictetus taught 2,000 years ago. Epictetus wrote, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, property, reputation, office. In a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Their behavior not in your power. Their words, their judgments, their toxicity, not yours to control. Your response to all of it entirely in your power." Here's how you practice this. When a toxic person provokes you, pause and ask, "What's actually in my control here?" The answer is never their behavior. It's always your response. Not whether they apologize, not whether they change, not whether they finally see your perspective. Only how you choose to react, what boundaries you set, and how much energy you give this interaction. When you redirect your focus from changing them to governing yourself, something powerful happens. You reclaim your sovereignty. They can still be toxic, but they can no longer control your peace because you've stopped trying to control what was never yours to control in the first place. Self-respect is self-governance. When you try to control toxic people, they control you through your frustration, your anxiety, your endless mental loops trying to figure them out. But when you govern only yourself, you're free. Not because they've changed, because you have. If you've spent years trying to change a toxic person, and you're finally ready to focus only on what you can control, your response? Comment, "I choose me" below. It's the hardest shift to make, but it's the one that gives you back your power. Understanding what you control is essential. But the third principle, this is the hardest one. It's about what you do when they attack, and every instinct tells you to destroy them right back. Principle number 3, don't mirror their toxicity. When someone attacks you with cruelty, every instinct in your body screams to hit back harder. They insult you, insult them worse. They manipulate, out-manipulate them. They spread lies, destroy their reputation. And here's the trap. You might win. You might hurt them. You might even make them regret coming after you. But in the process of fighting toxicity with toxicity, you become the thing you're fighting against. And the moment you do that, you've lost the only thing that actually matters, yourself. I watched this happen to a colleague named David. He worked alongside someone deeply toxic, a man who took credit for others' work, sabotaged projects, spread rumors to get ahead. For months, David took the high road. Then one day he snapped. He started playing the same game, collected dirt on his colleague, undermined him in meetings, spread his own strategic rumors, and it worked. The toxic colleague got pushed out. David won. But when it was over, David sat in my office and said something I'll never forget. I got him fired. But I can't look at myself the same way. I became exactly what I hated about him. I won the fight and lost who I was. That's the cost of mirroring toxicity. You might defeat them, but you sacrifice your character doing it. And character, that's the only thing that's actually yours. Their behavior is temporary. Your integrity is permanent. When you abandon it to beat them at their own game, you've handed them the real victory. They made you like them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like that." Not louder, not crueler, not smarter at their games, just refusing to become what you're standing against. Because the measure of your self-respect isn't whether you can out-toxic a toxic person. It's whether you can stay yourself when everything in you wants to descend. Here's why this principle is the hardest. It feels like losing. When they go low and you stay high, it looks like weakness, like you're letting them get away with it, like you're too afraid to fight. But the Stoics understood something most people never learn. Descending to their level isn't strength. It's surrender. Real strength is staying kind when cruelty would be easier. Staying honest when lies would serve you better. Staying yourself when becoming like them would help you win. Here's how you practice it. Next time a toxic person attacks, notice the urge to destroy them back. Feel it, acknowledge it, then ask, if I do this, will I respect myself tomorrow? Not, will I win? Not, will they learn their lesson? Just, will I still be someone I respect? Because if the answer is no, if your retaliation requires you to abandon your values, then the cost is too high. You don't defeat toxic people by becoming them. You defeat them by refusing to let them change who you are. Self-respect means being someone you respect. And if you have to become cruel, manipulative, or toxic to win, you haven't won anything. You've just proven they had the power to make you abandon yourself. Don't give them that. The first 3 principles are internal work, mindset, control, character. But the next 3 are about action. What you actually do when you can't avoid toxic people and need to protect your peace in practical ways. Principle number 4, respond, don't react. There's a difference between reaction and response that most people never learn. Reaction is instant, emotional, automatic. Someone provokes you and the words are out of your mouth before you've even thought about them. Response is deliberate, conscious, chosen. You feel the provocation, you pause, and then you decide what to do with it. Toxic people want your reaction. They want to know they got to you, that they can control your emotional state with their words. But when you give them a response instead, calm, measured, intentional, you've taken back control, not of them, of yourself. I saw the power of this distinction at a family gathering. My uncle made a comment designed to humiliate my brother in front of everyone. A dig about his career, his choices wrapped in that familiar tone of concern that's really just cruelty with plausible deniability. The old version of my brother would have exploded, defended himself, gotten loud, made it a scene. But this time he paused, just stood there for 3 full seconds breathing. Then he said quietly and evenly, "I'm proud of my choices. I hope you can respect that," and moved on. No defense, no justification, no explosion. My uncle tried to push further, but my brother just smiled and changed the subject. Later, my brother told me, I felt the anger. It was there. But I realized if I exploded, I'd just be giving him what he wanted. Proof that he could control me. So I chose a different response, and choosing it felt more powerful than any argument could have. That's the practice. You can't stop the feeling from arising. Anger, hurt, defensiveness, these are automatic. But what you do with that feeling, that's where your power lives. Between the provocation and your words, there's a space, a gap of maybe 3 seconds. And in that gap, you get to choose. Do I react from this emotion or do I respond from my values? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. The toxic person's words are the outside event. You can't control that. But the gap between their words and your response, that's your mind. That's your domain. That's where you exercise the only power that actually matters. The power to govern yourself. Here's the practice. Next time someone toxic provokes you, do what my brother did. Pause. 3 seconds minimum. Breathe. Feel the reaction forming. Notice it without acting on it. Then ask yourself, what response reflects who I actually am? Not who they're trying to make me be. Not the defensive, angry version they're summoning, but who I am when I'm at my best. Then speak from that place or don't speak at all. Both are responses. Neither is a reaction. The difference is simple but profound. Reactions give toxic people evidence that they have power over you. Responses prove to yourself that you have power over yourself. And self-respect isn't built by winning arguments with toxic people. It's built by choosing your behavior even when everything in you wants to be controlled by your emotions. You've learned not to mirror their toxicity. Now you've learned not to react to their provocations. But the 5th principle is about drawing a line they can't cross and holding it without apology. Principle number 5. Set boundaries without explanation or apology. A boundary isn't a negotiation, it's a statement. But most people treat boundaries like requests they need permission to enforce. They over-explain, "I can't do that because I'm really busy and I have all these other things happening," and they apologize. "I'm so sorry, but I just don't think I can." And every explanation, every apology, Every justification becomes ammunition for the toxic person to argue guilt or manipulate their way past the boundary. The moment you explain why your boundary exists, you've invited them to debate whether your reasons are good enough. And to a toxic person, your reasons will never be good enough. I watched my sister struggle with this for years. Her mother-in-law would call at all hours, demand visits on holidays, guilt her about every choice, and my sister would explain endlessly why she couldn't always comply. We're really tired this week. We already have plans. The kids need consistency in their schedule. Every reason became a problem her mother-in-law could solve. You're tired. I'll make it short. You have plans? Cancel them. Family comes first. The kids need consistency. Seeing their grandmother as consistency, the boundary never held because my sister kept treating it like a discussion instead of a decision. Then something shifted. After one particularly brutal guilt trip, my sister said 5 words. That doesn't work for us. Her mother-in-law asked why. My sister repeated, it doesn't work for us, pushed for a reason. My sister said calmly, I've told you our answer. The topic is closed. No explanation, no apology, no negotiation. Her mother-in-law was furious at first, but the boundary held because there was nothing left to argue with. My sister had learned what the Stoics knew. A boundary without justification is a wall. A boundary with justification is a door they'll keep trying to open. Seneca wrote, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Most people fear that setting a firm boundary will destroy the relationship. But what actually destroys relationships is the resentment that builds when you can't protect yourself because you're too afraid to draw a line without apologizing for it. Here's the practice. Next time you need to set a boundary with a toxic person, state it clearly and simply. I'm not available for that. I don't discuss that topic. I won't be attending. When they ask why, resist the urge to justify. Say, it's my decision, or that's what works for me, or nothing at all. When they push, and they will, don't defend. Don't explain. Don't apologize. Just restate the boundary or end the conversation. The boundary isn't the beginning of a discussion. It's the end of one. Your boundary doesn't need to make sense to them. It doesn't need their approval. It only needs to be clear and enforced. Self-respect means valuing your peace enough to protect it, even when protecting it makes people uncomfortable, especially when it makes toxic people uncomfortable. Because if you need their permission to have a boundary, it's not a boundary. It's a suggestion they'll ignore the moment it inconveniences them. You've learned to respond instead of react. Now you've learned to protect yourself with boundaries that don't need defending. But the 6th and final principle is about the power of choosing silence when they try to bait you into battles that don't matter. Principle number 6, use silence as your shield. Not every insult requires a response. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every toxic comment needs to be addressed, corrected, or acknowledged. Most people think silence means agreement or weakness or that the other person won. But silence isn't surrender. It's dismissal. It's the most powerful way to communicate something simple. You're not worth my words. When you respond to every jab, every passive-aggressive remark, every little dig, you're handing toxic people exactly what they want. Proof that they can control your attention and emotional state. But when you let it pass in silence, you've refused to play their game, and a game with no opponent dies quickly. My friend Karen worked with someone who made cutting remarks constantly. Little comments about her appearance, her work, her choices, always just subtle enough to deny if confronted, but sharp enough to sting. For months, Karen responded to everything, defended herself, corrected the record, tried to prove the remarks were unfair, and every response fed the cycle. The comments kept coming because they kept working. Then one day, after another snide remark, Karen just looked at her colleague for one long second and said nothing. Turned back to her computer and continued working. The silence was so unexpected that her colleague tried again. Nothing. Tried a third time with a more obvious jab. Karen didn't even look up. Within 2 weeks, the comments stopped because they'd lost their purpose. They weren't getting a reaction anymore. And without a reaction, they were just noise disappearing into silence. Here's what silence does that responses can't. It communicates that the person isn't important enough to engage. Every time you respond, even to defend yourself, even to correct a lie, you're confirming that their words matter to you, that they have the power to pull you into their chaos. But when you stay silent, you're saying something more devastating than any comeback. I don't need to defend myself against you. You're beneath my notice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. Their provocations are things you can't control. Your response or lack of it is what you can. And choosing silence isn't passivity. It's active refusal to let them dictate how you spend your energy. Here's the practice. The next time a toxic person baits you, insults, passive aggression, obvious provocation, pause and ask yourself, does this actually deserve my words? Not, can I win this argument? Not, should I let them get away with it? Just, is this worth my energy? 90% of the time, the answer is no. Let it die in the silence. Don't defend. Don't engage. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing they got to you. Just let it land in silence and evaporate. Your silence isn't agreement. It's the refusal to participate in their game. Self-respect means knowing which battles matter and which are just noise designed to drain you. Toxic people thrive on reaction. Deny them that and you've taken away their only weapon, not by defeating them in argument, but by refusing to show up to the fight at all. These 6 principles aren't about defeating toxic people. They're about staying yourself when everything around you is designed to make you someone else, and that's how you respect yourself, not by proving anything to them. By protecting who you are, no matter what they do, separate their behavior from your worth. Their cruelty reveals them, not you. Control only what you can control. Your response, never them. Don't mirror their toxicity. The best revenge is refusing to become like that. Respond, don't react. The gap between provocation and words is where your power lives. Set boundaries without apology. Protection doesn't need permission. Use silence as your shield. Not every battle deserves your energy. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal and cruelty daily. He wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like that." Self-respect isn't about defeating toxic people. It's about refusing to let them change who you are. If this helped, subscribe to Stoic Tide. Share it with someone dealing with toxic people.